of the history of the internet. Please, before we start, remember this is a very technical Wikipedia page. There's a lot of heavy jargon and technical terminology, so don't stress out if you don't know what everything means. Just sit back, relax, and listen to my voice. If you're not looking for a highly technical, whispering Wikipedia where I tell you facts, feel free to go and check on any of the other episodes in the series. There are many whispering Wikipedias on my Whispering Facts series. Now, if you have anything you want me to read about, please leave it in the comments below as a suggestion, and also say hello if you haven't, or say hello again if you have, because I love to maintain my YouTube friendships and I love to make new ones. Without further ado, let's get into this. So, this is how that they connected all of the different networks together. Last episode we talked about how they connected some, I think it was IP version 4 and IP version 6 and stuff like that. Now we're moving to ARPANET to NSFN net. After the ARPANET had been up and running for several years, ARPA looked for another agency to hand off the network to. ARPA's primary mission was funding cutting-edge research and development, not running a communications utility. Fair. Eventually, in July of 1975, the network had been turned over to the Defense Communications Agency, also part of the Department of Defense. In 1983, the US military portion of ARPANET was broken off as a separate network, the MILNET. MILNET subsequently became the unclassified but military-only NIPRNet, in parallel with the secret level SIPRNet and JWICS for top secret and above. NIPRNet does not have controlled security gateways to the public internet. NIPRNet does have controlled security gateways to the public internet. The networks based on the ARPANET were government funded and therefore restricted to non-commercial uses such as research. Unrelated commercial use was strictly forbidden. This initially restricted connections to military sites and universities. During the 1980s, the connections expanded to more educational institutions and even to a growing number of companies such as Digital Equipment Corporation and Hewlett-Packard HP, which were participating in research projects or providing services to those who were. Several other branches of the US government and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and the National Science Foundation, the NSF, and the Department of Energy, the DOE, became heavily involved in internet research and started development of a successor to ARPANET. In the mid-1980s, all three of these branches developed the first wide area networks based on TCP/IP. NASA developed the NASA Science Network, NSF developed CSNet, and DOE evolved the Energy Sciences Network, or ESNet. NASA developed the TCP/IP based NASA Science Network, NSN. In the mid-1980s, connecting space scientists to data and information stored anywhere in the world. In 1989, the DEC net-based Space Physics Analysis Network, SPAN, and the TCP/IP based NASA Science Network, NSN, were brought NSI provided connectivity to over 20,000 scientists across all 7 continents. In 1981, NSF supported the development of the Computer Science Network, the CSNet. CSNet connected with ARPANET using TCP/IP and ran TCP/IP over X25. That thing we talked about a while ago. But it also supported departments without sophisticated network connections using automated dial-up mail exchange. In 1986, the NSF created NSFNet, a 56 kilobits backbone to support the NSF-sponsored supercomputing centers. The NSFNet also provided support for the creation of regional research and education networks in the United States and for the connection of university and college campus networks to the regional networks. The use of NSFNet and regional networks was not limited to supercomputer users, and the 56 kilobyte networks quickly became overloaded. NSFNet was upgraded to 1.5 Mbits per second in 1988 under a cooperative agreement with the Merit Network in partnership with IBM, MCI, and the state of Michigan. The existence of NSFNet and the creation of the Federal Internet Exchanges, the FIXs, allowed ARPANET to be decommissioned in 1990. NSFNet was expanded and upgraded to 45 Mbits in 1991 and was decommissioned in 1995 when it was replaced by backbones operated by several commercial internet providers. The research and academic community continues to develop and advance networks such as Internet 2 in the United States and Janet in the United Kingdom. Transition towards the Internet. The term Internet was reflected in the first RFC published on the TCP protocol. As a short form of Internet working, when 2 terms were used interchangeably. In general, an Internet was a collection of networks linked by a common protocol. In the time period when ARPANET was connected to the newly formed NSFNet project in the late 1980s, the term was used as the name of the network, Internet being the large and global TCP/IP network. As interesting a network grew by needs of collaboration, exchange of data, and access of remote computing resources, the TCP/IP technology spread throughout the rest of the world. The hardware-agnostic approach in TCP/IP supported the use of existing network infrastructure such as the International Packet Switched Service, IPSS, X25 network to carry internet traffic. Many sites unable to link directly to the internet created simple gateways for the transfer of electronic mail, the most important application of the time. Sites with only intermittent connections used UUCP or FidoNet and relied on the gateways between these networks and the internet. Some gateway services went beyond simple mail peering, such as allowing access to File Transfer Protocol (FTP) sites via UUCP or mail. Finally, routing technologies were developed for the internet to remove the remaining centralized routing aspects. The exterior gateway protocols, the EGP, was replaced by a new protocol, the Border Gateway Protocol, the BGP. This provided a meshed topology for the internet and reduced the centric architecture, which ARPANET has emphasized. In 1994, classless interdomain routing, CIDR, was introduced to support better conservation of address space, which allowed use of route aggregation to decrease the size of routing tables. Now, TCP/IP goes global. In the 1980s, CERN, the European Internet, the link to the Pacific and beyond. In early 1982, Norsar and Peter Kirsten's group at the University College of London UCL left the ARPANET and began to use TCP/IP over SATNet. UCL provided access between the Internet and academic networks in the UK. Between 1984 and 88, CERN began installation and operation of TCP/IP to interconnect its major internal computer systems, workstations, PCs, and an accelerator control system. CERN continued to operate a limited self-development system, CERNnet, internally, and several incompatible, typically proprietary network protocols externally. There was a considerable resistance in Europe towards more widespread use of TCP/IP, and the CERN TCP/IP intranets remained isolated from the Internet until 1989, when a transatlantic connection to Cornell University was established. In 88, the first international connections to NSFnet was established by Francis Inria and Piet Biertema at the Centrum Wiskunde en Informatica CWI in the Netherlands. Daniel Karenberg from CWI visited Ben Segal, CERN's TCP/IP coordinator, looking for advice about the transition EUNet, the European side of the UUCP Usenet network, much of which ran over X25 links, over to TCP/IP. The previous year, Segal had met with Len Bozak from the then still small company Cisco about purchasing some TCP/IP routers for CERN, and Segal was able to give Karenberg advice and forward him on to Cisco for the appropriate hardware. This expanded the European portion of the Internet across the existing UUCP networks. The NorduNet connection to NSFnet was placed in soon after, providing an open access for university students in Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. In January 89, CERN opened its first external TCP/IP connections. This coincided with the creation of Rosal IP Europeans, RIPE. Initially, a group of IP network administrators who met regularly to carry out coordination work together. Later, in 1992, RIPE was formally registered as a cooperative in Amsterdam. In 91, Janet, the UK National Research and Education Network, adopted Internet Protocol on the existing network. The same year, Day Davies introduced Internet technology into the pan-European NEREN Europanet, which was built on the X25 protocol. The European Academic and Research Network, EARN, and RARE adopted IP around the same time, and the European Internet backbone eBone became operational in 1992. At the same time as the rise of internet working in Europe, ad hoc networking to ARPA, and in between, Australian universities formed based on various technologies such as X25 and UUCPnet. These were limited in their connection to the global networks due to the cost of making individual international UUCP dial-up or X25 connections. In 89, Australian universities joined the push towards using IP protocols to unify their networking infrastructures. AARNet was formed in 89 by the Australian Vice-Chancellor's Committee and provided a dedicated IP-based network for Australia. New Zealand's first international internet connection was established the same year. In May of 82, South Korea set up a 2-node domestic TCP/IP network, adding a third node to the following year. Japan, which had built the UUCP-based network JUNNet in 84, connected to NSFnet in 89, marking the spread of the Internet to Asia. It hosted the annual meeting of Society, INET 92 in Kobe. Singapore developed TechNet in 1990, and Thailand gained a global internet connection between Chulalongkorn University and UUNet in 92. Nonetheless, for a period in the late 80s and early 90s, engineers, organizations and nations were polarized over the issue of which standard, the OSI model or the Internet Protocol suite, would result in the best and most robust computer networks. While developed countries with technological infrastructures were joining the Internet, developing countries began to experience a digital divide separating them from the Internet. On an essentially continental basis, they are building organizations for Internet resource administration and sharing operational experience as more and more transmission facilities go into place. Let's talk about Africa. At the beginning of the 1990s, African countries relied upon X25 IPSS and 2400 baud modem UUCP links for international and inter-network computer communications. In August of 95, Infomail Uganda Ltd, a privately held firm in Kampala, now known as Infocom, and NSN Network Services of Avon, Colorado, sold in 97, and now as Clear Channel Satellite established Africa's first native TCP IP high-speed satellite internet services. The data connection was originally carried by C-brand RSCC Russian satellite, which connected Infomail Kampala's offices directly to NSN May West point of presence using a private network from NSN's leased ground station in New Jersey. Infocom's first satellite connection was just 64 kbits, serving as Sun host computer and 12 US robotics dial-up modems. In 96, a USAID-funded project the Leland initiated started working on developing full internet connectivity for the continent. Guinea, Mozambique, Madagascar, and Rwanda gained satellite Earth stations in 97, followed by Ivory Coast and Benin in 98. Africa is building an internet infrastructure. Afrinic, headquartered in Mauritius, managed IP address allocation for the continent. As do the other internet regions, there is an operational forum, the Internet Community of Operational Networking Specialists. There are many programs to provide high-performance transmission planned, and the western and southern coasts have undersea optical cable. High-speed cables join North Africa and the Horn of Africa to intercontinental cable systems. Undersea cable development is slower for East Asia. The original joint effort between New Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, and the East Africa Submarine System, EASY, has broken off and may become two efforts. Now, we move to Asia and Oceania. The Asia-Pacific Network Information Centre, APNIC, headquartered in Australia, manages IP address allocations for the continent. APNIC sponsors an operational forum, the Asia-Pacific Regional Internet Conference on Operational Technologies. Apricot. That's great. South Korea's first internet system, the System Development Network, SDN, began operation on 15th of May 82. SDN was connected to the rest of the world in 83 using UUCP, which stands for Unix Copy, connected to CSNet in December of 84 and formally connected to the US Internet in 90. In 91, the People's Republic of China saw its first TCP IP college network, Tsinghua University's TUNET. The PRC went on to make its first global internet connection in 94 between the Beijing electrospectrometer Administration and Stanford University's Linear Accelerator Center. However, China went on to implement its own digital divide by implementing a countrywide content filter, which you probably would know about. Now, Latin America, this is one I don't really know about at all. As with the other regions, Latin America and the Caribbean Internet Addresses Registry, LACNIC, manages the IP address, space, and other resources for its area. LACNIC headquarters in Uruguay operates DNS route, reverse DNS, and other key services. Now it's time to talk about the rise of the Internet. Initially, as with its predecessor networks, the systems that would evolve into the Internet was primarily for government and government body use. However, the interest in commercial use of the Internet quickly became a commonly debated topic. Although commercial use was forbidden, the exact definition of commercial use was unclear and subjective. UUCPnet and X25 IPSS had no such restrictions, which would eventually see the official barring of UUCPnet, use of ARPANET and NSFNet connections. Some UUCP links still remained connecting to these networks, however, as administrators cast a blind eye to their operation. As a result, during the late 80s, the first internet service provider ISP companies were formed. Companies like PSINet, UUNet, Netcom, and Portal Software were formed to provide service to the regional research networks and provide alternate network asset, UUCP-based email and Usenet news to the public. The first commercial dial-up ISP in the United States was called The World, which opened in 1989. In 1992, the US Congress passed the Scientific Advanced Technology Act, which allowed NSF to support access by the research and education communities to computer networks which were not used exclusively for research and education purposes, thus permitting the NSFNet to interconnect with commercial networks. This caused controversy within the research and education community, who were concerned commercial use of the network might lead to an internet that was less responsive to their needs, and within the community of commercial network providers who felt that government subsidies were given an unfair advantage to some organizations. Now, in the 90s, ARPANET's goals had been fulfilled and new networking technologies exceeds their original scope, and the project became to a close. New network services providers, including PSINet, Alternet, SurfNet, ANS, Go Plus Ray, and many other were offering network access to commercial customers. NSFNet was no longer the de facto backbone and exchange point of the Internet. The Commercial Internet Exchange, Metropolitan Area Exchange, and later network access points were becoming the primary Internet connections between many networks. The final restrictions on carrying commercial traffic ended on April 30th, 1995, when the National Science Foundation ended its sponsorship of the NSFNet backbone service, and the service ended. NSF provided initial support for the NAPs and interim support to help the regional research and education networks transition to commercial ISPs. NSP also sponsored the Very High Speed Backbone Network Service, VBNS, which continued to provide support for the supercomputing centers and research and education in the United States. Now, it looks like next episode we're going to get into the more kind of interesting bit. It's probably going to have a fair or large amount of jargon next episode, just like this one. But next episode we're starting by looking at the World Wide Web, an introduction of browsers. large amount of jargon and everything in this episode. I hope you had a nice pause, a nice break, a nice stop, a nice time